Careful, sweetheart, the blonde woman said loudly enough for half the ballroom to hear. That dress is already fighting for its life. A ripple of laughter moved through the private dining room of Manhattan's most exclusive hotel, and for one humiliating second, every eye landed on the Curvy Waitress, holding a silver tray beside the champagne tower. Elena Marlowe froze, but only for a heartbeat. At 29, Elena had learned how to survive rooms where people judged her before she ever opened her mouth. She was plus-size, soft around the hips, full through the waist, and stronger than strangers ever guessed. She had spent years being told she was too big for certain uniforms, too ordinary for certain men, too invisible for any life that mattered. Tonight, she needed the overtime more than she needed her pride. Her mother's medical bills were stacked beside the unopened rent notice in her tiny Queens apartment, and losing this job would mean choosing which payment she could afford to miss. So Elena steadied the tray and looked directly at the woman who had insulted her. "The dress is fine, ma'am," she said calmly, "but thank you for your concern." The laughter died faster than it had started. Vanessa DeLuca, the elegant woman wearing a diamond engagement ring worth more than Elena could earn in 20 years, slowly lowered her champagne glass. Vanessa was beautiful in the polished, dangerous way magazine covers loved, slender, flawless, and accustomed to watching people apologize before she even demanded it. "Excuse me?" she asked. Elena knew she should look away. Instead, she gave Vanessa the same patient smile she gave difficult customers every night. "I said the dress is fine." Across the ballroom, a man in a black tailored suit stopped listening to the conversation beside him. His name was Dominic Moretti, and everyone in that room knew exactly who he was. At 37, Dominic was the Mafia Boss who controlled one of the most powerful criminal organizations on the East Coast, though his legitimate empire of shipping companies, nightclubs, real estate, and private security made him untouchable in rooms like this one. He was wealthy enough to buy the hotel, feared enough that senators lowered their voices around him, and cold enough that even his closest allies rarely knew what he was thinking. Dominic had spent the last 6 years trusting contracts more than people. After betrayal inside his own family left his younger brother dead, and Dominic with a lesson he never forgot. Affection created weaknesses enemies could use. His engagement to Vanessa was supposed to be strategic, convenient, emotionless. He had never mistaken it for love. But now, watching his fiancée humiliate a waitress who refused to shrink beneath her cruelty, something in Dominic's expression changed. Vanessa stepped closer to Elena. "Do you have any idea who you're speaking to?" she whispered. Elena's fingers tightened under the tray. She was embarrassed, exhausted, and suddenly aware that several guests had begun filming with their phones. But when a younger busboy accidentally bumped the edge of a nearby table, Elena moved without hesitation, catching a falling glass before it struck him and quietly telling him, "You're okay. Keep going." Dominic noticed that too. She had been mocked in front of strangers, yet her first instinct was still to protect someone else from embarrassment. Vanessa's smile sharpened. "Manager," she called, raising one jeweled hand. "I want this woman removed." Elena's stomach dropped. The floor manager appeared instantly, pale and nervous. "Miss DeLuca, I'm sure we can—" "Fire her." Vanessa looked Elena up and down. Maybe next time she'll learn which room she belongs in. Elena felt the words hit somewhere deeper than she wanted them to. For years, people had found different ways to tell her the same thing. Take up less space, expect less, ask for less, become easier to overlook. But this time Elena placed the tray on the nearest table, straightened her shoulders, and removed her server's apron herself. "You don't have to fire me," she said quietly. "I won't work for people who think money gives them permission to humiliate someone." The room went completely still. Vanessa gave a short laugh. "You'll regret that before midnight." Then a man's voice came from behind her, low and controlled enough to silence the entire ballroom. "No, Vanessa." Dominic Moretti stepped into the light, his dark gaze moving past his fiancée and settling on Elena. "I think you're the one who's going to regret what happened tonight." Dominic's words landed harder than a shout ever could. Vanessa turned slowly, the confidence draining from her face as Dominic Moretti crossed the marble floor toward them. Conversations stopped. Champagne glasses hovered halfway to lips. Even the musicians seemed to understand that something had changed, because the soft jazz faded into silence. Elena stood beside the abandoned serving tray with her apron still clenched in one hand, unsure why the most feared man in the room was looking at her instead of his fiancée. Dominic stopped only a few feet away. At 6'2", dressed in a charcoal black suit that fit him like armor, he didn't need to raise his voice to command attention. "Give her back the apron," he told the floor manager. Vanessa blinked. "Dominic, she insulted me." "No." His eyes remained on Elena. "She answered you." A few guests exchanged nervous looks. Vanessa forced a laugh. "You're embarrassing me over a waitress." That was when Dominic finally looked at her. His expression was so calm it made the room colder. "You embarrassed yourself." Vanessa's cheeks flushed. "This is my engagement dinner." "Then perhaps you should remember why these people are here." He turned toward the manager. "Is Miss—" He paused, realizing he didn't know Elena's name. "Marlowe," Elena said before she could stop herself. His gaze returned to her. "Elena Marlowe." The way he repeated it startled her. Not sweetheart, not girl, not waitress. Her name. "Is Miss Marlowe employed by this hotel?" Dominic asked. "Yes, Mr. Moretti." "Then only hotel management decides whether she keeps her job. Not my guests, not my fiancée." Vanessa stared at him as though he had slapped the air from her lungs. "You're choosing her side?" Dominic's jaw tightened. There shouldn't have been sides. Elena should have felt relieved, but something about the room suddenly bothered her. Near the service entrance, a man wearing a catering jacket was moving against the flow of employees. Everyone else carried trays toward the tables. He carried nothing. Elena recognized him because 10 minutes earlier she had seen the same man arguing with security near the elevators. Now his hand was inside his jacket, and his eyes were fixed on Dominic. Her pulse jumped. "Mr. Moretti," she whispered. Dominic glanced at her, perhaps expecting thanks. Instead, Elena stepped closer. "Don't turn around." His eyes sharpened instantly. "Why?" "There's a man behind you who doesn't belong here." Dominic didn't move. Elena swallowed. "Blue catering jacket, near the service door. He tried to get upstairs earlier. Security stopped him." Dominic's entire posture changed, almost imperceptibly. One hand lowered beside his jacket, while 2 men positioned near the walls noticed his signal. Vanessa scoffed. "Oh, please! Now she's trying to make herself important." Elena ignored her. The stranger began walking toward them. 20 feet, 15, 10. Dominic's security moved, but Elena saw something they didn't. The man wasn't reaching for a weapon. He was reaching toward the inside pocket where hotel staff kept access cards. "His pocket," Elena said quickly. "He has a master key." Dominic's men intercepted him before he reached the table. The stranger struggled for only a moment before a stolen electronic keycard and a folded floor plan slipped onto the marble. The ballroom erupted in whispers. Dominic looked down at the floor plan. A red circle had been drawn around his private suite upstairs. His security chief leaned close. "Boss, we need to move you." Dominic didn't respond immediately. He looked at Elena instead. "How did you know?" She hugged her arms across herself, suddenly aware that every person in the room was staring again, but this time differently. "Because nobody notices the staff," she said quietly, "so we notice everything." Something shifted behind Dominic's eyes. For years he had surrounded himself with expensive security, powerful allies, and men trained to recognize threats. Yet the person who had seen danger first was the woman everyone else had treated as invisible. "You're coming with us," he said. Elena's eyes widened. "Absolutely not." A faint flicker of surprise crossed his face. Few people refused Dominic Moretti so quickly. "Miss Marlowe, someone just entered this building with a map of my private floor. Until I know why, this ballroom isn't safe." "Then evacuate everyone." "Already happening." He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "You noticed him. That means he may have noticed you noticing him." Elena's defiance faltered. Dominic removed his suit jacket and placed it gently over her shoulders, shielding her from the phones still pointed their way. "I'm not asking you to trust me," he said. "I'm asking you to stay alive long enough to decide whether you ever will." Before Elena could answer, Dominic's security chief returned, carrying the stranger's phone. His face had gone pale. "Boss," he said, turning the screen toward Dominic, "there's a photograph on here." Dominic looked down, and every trace of warmth disappeared from his expression. The photograph had been taken less than an hour earlier. It showed Elena entering the hotel through the employee entrance. Beneath it were 6 words: "Use the waitress to get Moretti." For 3 full seconds, Elena forgot how to breathe. Dominic stared at the photograph on the phone while the ballroom emptied around them under the quiet direction of his security team. The image was unmistakable. Elena stepping through the employee entrance at 6:47 p.m., her black uniform coat buttoned against the November cold, completely unaware that someone across the street had been watching her. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Neither do I," Dominic said, and somehow his calm voice frightened her more than panic would have. He handed the phone to his security chief. "Lock down the service entrances. Nobody leaves until every employee credential is verified." Then he turned to Elena. "Who knew you were working tonight?" She shook her head. "My manager, a few co-workers, my mother." Vanessa, still standing nearby, folded her arms. "How convenient." Dominic's eyes cut toward her. "Not now." "You really believe this?" Vanessa snapped. "A stranger sneaks into your engagement dinner, carrying her photograph, and suddenly she's the victim?" Elena felt every old humiliation rise inside her again, but this time she refused to lower her eyes. "I didn't ask anyone to take my picture." "Maybe you didn't have to." Vanessa stepped closer. "Maybe you were supposed to get his attention." Dominic moved between them before Elena could respond. It was a subtle gesture, but unmistakable. His back became a wall between Elena and the accusation. "Enough." Vanessa stared at him. "You barely know her, and you've already judged her twice tonight." His voice hardened. "That tells me more about you than it does about her." Before Vanessa could answer, the security chief returned. "Boss, we identified the man. His name is Nolan Pierce. He works for Victor Salerno." The name changed Dominic instantly. Elena saw it in the tightening of his jaw. Victor Salerno was not a name spoken casually in Dominic's world. He was the head of a rival organization that had spent 2 years trying to weaken Moretti territory through stolen contracts, bribed officials, and quiet betrayals. Dominic had refused every attempt at war because he knew violence would hurt innocent people first. But Salerno had apparently decided patience was weakness. "Why me?" Elena asked. Dominic looked at her for a long moment. "Because tonight you became visible to me." The words should not have affected her, but they did. "That happened 10 minutes ago. The photograph was taken before I ever spoke to you." Elena's stomach dropped. Dominic understood the implication at the same time. Someone had selected her before the confrontation with Vanessa. Someone already knew she would be near him. "Check the staffing list," Dominic ordered. His chief immediately called the hotel manager. Minutes later, they discovered something worse. Elena had not originally been assigned to the Moretti event. Another waitress had switched shifts with her that afternoon after receiving an anonymous payment of $500. Elena stared at the manager. "She told me her son was sick." "She lied," Dominic said quietly, "or someone paid her to." The room suddenly felt too large and too empty. Elena pulled Dominic's jacket tighter around herself. "So somebody wanted me here." "Yes. Why?" "That's so." Dominic's gaze lowered to her wrist. "Because they knew something I didn't." Elena instinctively covered the faint bruise near her bracelet. Dominic noticed. "Who did that?" "It's nothing, Elena." His tone softened when he said her name. "Someone photographed you, manipulated your work schedule, and brought a map of my suite into this building. Tonight, nothing is nothing." She hesitated, then admitted, "A man came to my apartment yesterday." Dominic went still. "What man?" "I don't know. He said he was collecting a debt." "Your debt?" "My brother's." Her voice tightened. "He disappeared 8 months ago and left my mother and me with everything." Dominic's expression darkened. What did the man want? Elena looked away. "He asked where I worked. I refused to tell him." "And the bruise?" She didn't answer. Dominic didn't force her. Instead, he reached into his pocket, took out his phone, and made one call. "Send 2 cars to Queens. Elena Marlowe's mother is to be brought somewhere secure. No mistakes." Elena spun toward him. "You can't just move my mother." "You're right." Dominic lowered the phone. "Tell me where you want her taken." The choice surprised her more than the protection. He could have commanded. Instead, he asked. Elena swallowed. "My aunt lives in Connecticut." Then Connecticut. Vanessa gave a bitter laugh from behind them. "This is unbelievable. You're reorganizing your security around a waitress?" Dominic turned slowly. I'm protecting someone who became a target because she was brought into my world. Vanessa's face hardened. Then maybe she should have stayed out of it. The sentence hung strangely in the air. Elena looked at her. Dominic did too. For the first time that night, Vanessa seemed to realize she had said too much. At that exact moment, Dominic's security chief returned carrying an envelope recovered from Nolan Pierce's jacket. He opened it, then stopped. Boss. Dominic took the paper. Inside was a photocopy of Elena's employee file and a handwritten note across the bottom. Ask your fiancée why she requested Elena Marlowe by name. Vanessa's face lost all colour. Dominic read the handwritten note once, then again, as if repetition might make the words less dangerous. It didn't. The ballroom had nearly emptied, leaving only security, hotel management, Vanessa, Elena, and Dominic beneath the cold glow of the chandeliers. Elena could hear the faint hum of the ventilation system and the distant sound of elevators opening somewhere beyond the doors. Tell me that's fake, Dominic said. Vanessa lifted her chin. Of course it is. Then you won't mind explaining why her name was on your guest staffing request. Vanessa's eyes flicked toward Elena for half a second. Dominic caught it. So did Elena. I requested several servers, Vanessa said. I wanted experienced staff. Elena stared at her. You've never met me. Apparently I had. Vanessa's voice sharpened. Maybe I saw you downstairs before. Dominic took one slow step closer. The staffing request was submitted 3 days ago. Silence. Elena felt the room tilt beneath her. 3 days ago, Vanessa had known exactly who she was. 3 days ago, before the insult, before the engagement dinner, before Dominic ever noticed her, someone had placed Elena in the centre of a trap. Search her phone, Dominic said. Vanessa laughed in disbelief. You cannot be serious. I am. I'm your fiancée. For the moment. The words hit like a blade. Vanessa's expression fractured. You would humiliate me for her. Dominic's eyes turned cold. No, I'm questioning you because someone used an innocent woman to get close to me. Vanessa pulled her phone from her clutch and held it against her chest. You have no right. Elena stepped forward before Dominic could answer. Then let me leave. Both of them looked at her. She removed Dominic's jacket from her shoulders and held it out to him. This started because I was brought here. If I'm the bait, I shouldn't be standing next to the target. Dominic didn't take the jacket. You think I'm letting you walk into the street alone? I think you have an empire to protect, and I think someone bruised your wrist, photographed you, manipulated your schedule, and turned your life into leverage. His voice dropped. You're not leaving unprotected. Elena's eyes burned, but she refused to let the tears fall. I don't need another powerful person deciding what happens to me. Something in Dominic's face softened. Instead of ordering her to stay, he stepped back. Then choose. Elena blinked. What? You can go to your aunt in Connecticut with your mother. You can stay somewhere secure in Manhattan, or you can walk out that door if that's what you truly want. He paused. But whichever you choose, I'll make sure no one follows you. Elena looked at him differently then. He could control a room with one sentence, yet he was giving her something the world rarely had, a choice. Before she could answer, Dominic's security chief approached with a tablet. We recovered deleted messages from Pierce's phone. He glanced at Vanessa. You need to see this. The screen showed a thread of encrypted messages. One line was enough to freeze the room. Put Marlowe near Moretti. He'll recognize her eventually. Elena's breath caught. Recognize me? Dominic stared at the screen. His brow furrowed, and for the first time that evening, uncertainty broke through his control. There's more, the security chief said. He opened an attached image. It was an old newspaper clipping from 6 years earlier, taken outside a Brooklyn hospital after the night Dominic's younger brother was killed. In the blurred background stood a much younger Elena, wearing blue scrubs and holding a blood-soaked towel against a wounded man's side. Dominic stopped breathing. Elena stared at the image. That was you, she whispered. Memory crashed into place. 6 years ago, Elena had been working as a hospital transport aide when she found an injured stranger collapsed behind the emergency entrance. He had refused to give his name. She had kept pressure on his wound and stayed with him until doctors arrived. She had never seen him again. Dominic looked at her as though the entire room had vanished. You told me not to close my eyes, he said quietly. Elena's lips parted. She remembered the stranger's hand gripping hers. She remembered telling him he was not allowed to die in an alley because somebody somewhere would miss him. Dominic's voice became almost inaudible. I searched for you afterward. Vanessa suddenly turned toward the exit. Dominic's guards blocked her path. Move, she snapped. But the security chief was already opening another recovered message. This one had been sent from a number saved under a false name. Elena recognized the last 4 digits immediately. They belonged to the man who had come to her apartment. Dominic read the message aloud. If Moretti remembers the waitress, Vanessa loses control of the engagement. His gaze lifted slowly toward his fiancée. What exactly were you afraid Elena would make me remember? Vanessa's composure finally broke. You think this is about romance? She hissed. You still don't understand. She looked at Elena with something far more dangerous than jealousy. Fear. She wasn't supposed to save you 6 years ago. Elena went still. Dominic's expression turned deadly. Vanessa swallowed, then whispered the truth that changed everything. She was supposed to find your brother first. Dominic did not move for several seconds. That frightened everyone more than anger would have. Vanessa's final confession hung in the ballroom like smoke. Elena had not accidentally crossed into his past. Someone had deliberately placed her near the tragedy that destroyed his family 6 years earlier. Elena stared at Vanessa, trying to understand how a night she had almost forgotten could have been connected to people powerful enough to manipulate her life years later. What do you mean I was supposed to find his brother first? Elena asked. Vanessa's eyes darted toward Dominic, then toward the security guards blocking the exits. Ask your precious fiancée, Dominic said, his voice quiet and lethal. Vanessa laughed nervously. You're making this bigger than it is. My brother died that night. Dominic stepped closer. There is nothing bigger. The security chief placed another recovered file on the tablet. It contained old payment records tied to one of Victor Salerno's shell companies. The dates reached back 6 years. One payment had been issued to a hospital employee the morning after Dominic's brother died. Another had been made 3 days ago to the waitress who switched shifts with Elena. Elena felt cold spread through her chest. They've been watching me all this time? Not continuously, the chief said. It looks like your name resurfaced when someone reopened the old hospital records. Vanessa suddenly snapped, because she saw something. Dominic turned toward her. The room went silent. Vanessa realized too late what she had admitted. Elena searched her memory, 6 years ago. Rain behind the Brooklyn hospital, Dominic bleeding beside the emergency entrance, a second vehicle speeding away, a man standing across the alley before disappearing into the darkness. Then another memory surfaced, one she had dismissed for years. There was someone else, Elena whispered. Dominic's expression sharpened. Who? A man near the loading dock. He was wearing a hospital security jacket, but the badge was upside down. Vanessa closed her eyes. Dominic saw it. You know who she's talking about? Vanessa said nothing. Dominic's chief enlarged an archived photograph of Victor Salerno's men. Elena scanned the faces until her finger stopped. Him. The man was older now, heavier, but she remembered the scar near his eyebrow. Dominic's security chief inhaled sharply. That's Matteo Vale. Dominic's face hardened. My father's former driver. The betrayal landed deeper than any rival attack. Matteo had been inside the Moretti family for 20 years. He had driven Dominic and his brother as children. He had disappeared shortly after the killing, supposedly out of grief. Now the truth was clear. The attack had come from inside. Vanessa began backing away. Dominic, listen to me. My family only wanted the alliance. Salerno promised he could stabilize everything if I married you. Dominic looked at her with complete disgust. So you helped bury the truth about my brother? I was protecting my family. By using Elena? Vanessa's eyes flashed toward the waitress. She was supposed to be nobody. That sentence changed Elena. All evening she had endured being mocked, judged, photographed, threatened and treated like a disposable piece on someone else's board. This time she stepped out from behind Dominic before he could shield her. That was your mistake, Elena said. Vanessa stared at her. Elena's voice trembled, but she did not. You thought because I carried trays and worried about rent and didn't look like the women in your magazines, nobody would listen if I spoke. You thought I would stay small because people taught me to feel small. She took another step forward. I remember Matteo Valle, I remember the car, and I remember something else. Dominic turned to her. Elena reached into her handbag and pulled out an old brass key attached to a faded hospital tag. The wounded man who arrived before Dominic dropped this that night. I kept it because no one claimed it. Dominic's chief examined the number engraved into the metal. His eyes widened. Boss, this belongs to an old storage facility your brother used. Dominic stared at Elena. Suddenly, the entire conspiracy had a physical trail. Whatever he hid there could prove who betrayed him, Elena said. Before anyone could answer, every light in the ballroom went out. Darkness swallowed the room. A fire alarm screamed overhead. Dominic immediately grabbed Elena's hand and pulled her behind him. Emergency lights flashed red along the walls. Then his security chief's radio crackled with a frantic warning. Boss, Salerno's men breached the underground garage. They're heading for the service elevators. Dominic tightened his grip around Elena's hand. How many? At least 6. Elena looked toward the brass key still in her palm. They're not here for you. Dominic turned. She understood before he did. They're here for this. A heavy impact shook the ballroom doors. Vanessa smiled through the darkness. You should have let the waitress walk away. Dominic stepped in front of Elena as another blow hit the doors, but Elena caught his sleeve. No. He looked back at her. Her fear was real, but so was her resolve. 6 years ago, I saved you without knowing your name. Tonight, you don't get to face this alone. Dominic's expression changed. For the first time, the Mafia boss who trusted no one placed something more valuable than his empire into another person's hands. Then stay beside me. The doors burst inward, and Dominic Moretti and Elena Marlowe turned together to face whoever came through. The ballroom doors burst inward, but the men who entered never made it more than a few steps. Dominic's security team had already positioned themselves behind the marble columns, and within seconds the attackers were surrounded, disarmed, and forced to the floor without a shot being fired. Elena stayed beside Dominic exactly as she had promised, one hand gripping the brass key while red emergency lights flashed across his face. Vanessa tried to slip toward a side exit in the confusion, but Dominic's security chief blocked her path. It's over, Dominic said. Vanessa turned toward him, furious and desperate. You're throwing away an alliance for her? Dominic looked at Elena, then back at the woman he had once agreed to marry for power. No, I'm ending an alliance built on lies. Vanessa's expression twisted. She's a waitress. Dominic's voice became colder. Her name is Elena Marlowe. You will use it. The words struck Elena harder than she expected. For years, people had reduced her to her body, her job, her bank account, everything except who she actually was. Dominic had just restored her dignity in the same room where Vanessa had tried to take it away. By sunrise, the brass key had led Dominic's men to an old storage unit in Brooklyn. Inside was a locked metal box containing copies of financial records, photographs, and a recorded statement Dominic's brother had hidden days before his death. The evidence exposed Matteo Valle as the insider who had sold information to Victor Salerno and revealed that Vanessa's family had helped conceal the betrayal in exchange for influence over the Moretti organization. Vanessa had not ordered Dominic's brother's death, but she had known enough to protect the people responsible. And when Elena's name resurfaced in the old hospital records, she helped place Elena at the engagement dinner so Salerno's men could use her as leverage. Dominic ended the engagement before breakfast. By noon, the evidence had been turned over to attorneys and investigators capable of dismantling the conspiracy without dragging innocent people into another cycle of revenge. Elena's mother was safely with her aunt in Connecticut, and for the first time in 24 hours, Elena finally stopped looking over her shoulder. 3 days later, she stood on the rooftop terrace of one of Dominic's Manhattan buildings, wrapped in a cream-colored coat against the cold wind. The city stretched below them beneath a golden sunset. Dominic approached slowly, carrying 2 cups of coffee. 2 sugars, he said, handing one to her. Elena smiled faintly. You remembered. I remember things that matter. He stood beside her, not touching her until she chose to close the space between them. Your hotel offered you your job back, he said. I know. Will you take it? Elena looked out over the skyline. Maybe somewhere else. For once I want to decide what I want instead of what I can survive. Dominic nodded. Good. She glanced at him. You're not going to offer me some ridiculous position in your company? I considered it. Dominic. The corner of his mouth almost became a smile. Then I remembered you don't like powerful men deciding your life. Elena laughed, and the sound surprised both of them. The man feared by half the city simply stood there listening to it. After a moment, Dominic's expression grew serious. There's something I never thanked you for. 6 years ago? 6 years ago, and 3 nights ago. Elena shook her head. You don't owe me anything. I know. His answer was immediate. That's why this matters. He reached for her hand, but stopped just before touching it, giving her the choice. Elena looked at his open palm and placed her hand inside it. Dominic's fingers closed gently around hers. I spent years believing anyone close to me would eventually become a weakness, he said. You proved something different. Elena raised an eyebrow. That waitresses are excellent at spotting suspicious men? This time he actually smiled. That trusting someone can make you stronger. Her smile faded into something softer. And you taught me that being seen doesn't always mean being judged. Dominic stepped closer. For what it's worth, Elena, there was never anything about you that needed to become smaller. Her eyes filled, but these tears carried no shame. Dominic brushed one away with his thumb and rested his forehead lightly against hers. Months later, Elena returned to that same hotel ballroom. Not carrying a tray, not hiding behind an apron, and not apologizing for taking up space. She entered holding Dominic's hand, while guests who once whispered about her now stood respectfully aside. She had chosen a new career managing a charitable foundation supporting working families facing medical debt, using Dominic's funding but running it entirely on her own terms. And Dominic, once defined by control and suspicion, had finally built something his empire could never buy, a home where he could lower his guard. A year after the night Vanessa mocked the wrong waitress, Dominic asked Elena to marry him on the same rooftop where she had first realized she was free to choose her own future. She said yes. Not because he was powerful enough to protect her, but because he had learned how to stand beside her without ever asking her to shrink. And Elena finally understood the truth. The wrong people had spent years hiding from her. She had never been difficult to love. She had simply been waiting for someone strong enough to recognize her worth without trying to change it. So what do you think? Did Dominic fall for Elena because she saved his life, or because she was the first person brave enough to see the man beneath the Mafia Boss? Tell us in the comments, and if you want more stories where danger meets loyalty, healing, and unexpected love, subscribe to the channel for the next Mafia Boss story.